Subscribe to keep it terrifying for creepy tales, horror, and nightmares you won't forget. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and keep it terrifying.
Before Leo could respond, a deep, resonating sound vibrated through the cave, like a low growl that shook the very foundation of the earth. The walls trembled, and the air grew thick again, the same suffocating pressure he had felt earlier, only stronger now. The Leviathan was near. It was here. Leo's mind screamed at him to leave. He had to get out of the cave. But as he turned toward the entrance, something froze him in place. A voice, his mother's voice, whispered in his ear. The words were unintelligible at first, but slowly, they came into focus. You must end it, Leo. The blood must be spilled. The seal must be broken. His heart raced. He spun around to find Thomas staring at him with a grim, knowing expression. It's all been leading to this, Leo. The creature won't stop until it has you. And then, the ground trembled violently, as if the Leviathan was coming for them, its enormous form crashing through the earth itself. Part 5, The Choice. The tremor in the cave deepened, rattling the walls with a sickening, low vibration that seemed to come from the very bowels of the earth. Leo's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at Thomas, who was now standing rigid, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and understanding. It's too late to escape, Thomas said, his voice quiet but certain. The Leviathan is already here, Leo. The curse is in your blood. You're the one it's been waiting for. You felt it, haven't you? Leo took a step back, his breath shallow. The voice, the whisper of his mother, it echoed in his mind, her words piercing through his thoughts. The blood must be spilled. What did she mean by that? How could he be connected to all this? Tell me what you're talking about, Leo said, his voice cracking with disbelief. I don't understand. My family, what did they do? Thomas's expression softened, but there was no pity in his gaze. They awakened something long ago. Something ancient. It's been lying dormant beneath the earth, beneath the waves, for centuries. The settlers, they thought they could control it, but they were fools. They made a pact with it. And now, the bloodline that started it all must finish what they began. Leo felt his knees weaken as the weight of Thomas's words settled on him. He backed up to the stone altar, almost as if the cold, ancient stone might offer some comfort. Your family, Thomas continued, his voice cracking, they didn't just open a door. They called it. The Leviathan, or whatever it truly is, wasn't meant to be unleashed. But your bloodline, your ancestors used it to gain power, wealth, control over the town. They thought they could bargain with the creature, make it a tool. But now it's coming for all of us. And only one thing can stop it. The walls of the cave seemed to close in around Leo. The air grew thick, the oppressive pressure building again. He could hear the faint crashing of waves in the distance, growing louder, more violent. And then there was a low rumble, almost like a growl, coming from deep within the earth. The blood must be spilled. Leo's mother's voice repeated, clearer this time, as though she were standing right behind him. The words echoed in his mind with a finality that made his stomach churn. What do you mean? What's the blood? Leo demanded, his voice desperate. Thomas turned toward the altar, kneeling beside it. His hand brushed over the markings carved deep into the stone. This altar, he said, his voice low and reverent, is where it all began. Your ancestors made a ritual here. They called to the Leviathan, and it answered. They struck a deal with it, but in exchange, they promised it would return one day. Leo felt something deep in his chest tighten. So it wasn't just about the town, it was about me. Thomas nodded, eyes filled with guilt and dread. It's always been about you, Leo. Your family, your blood, they are the key to the creature's awakening. And now, you're the last one left. Leo's mind was spinning. The truth was unraveling before him, and it was worse than he could have ever imagined. His family had somehow connected them to this nightmare. But why had they kept it hidden? Why had they let the town live in ignorance? How do we stop it? Leo asked, his voice tight with fear and confusion. The pressure in the cave was growing, thick and suffocating. The growls from the Leviathan were louder now, reverberating through the stone, making the walls tremble. You don't, Thomas whispered. Not unless you're willing to make a sacrifice. Leo turned sharply to look at him. What kind of sacrifice? Thomas stood, his face pale and resigned. The blood must be spilled to break the seal. And the only one who can do it, he trailed off, his eyes shifting to the altar, then back to Leo. Is you. Leo's breath hitched in his throat. What are you talking about? What do you mean, I have to spill my own blood? Thomas's face twisted with pain. I wish there was another way. But it's the only way to stop the Leviathan. The ritual has to be completed. And to complete it, your blood is the key. It's your bloodline that called the creature into the world. And only your blood can seal it away again. The chamber felt colder now, the air pressing in on Leo as if the very earth was rejecting him. He could feel the weight of the decision before him, a choice he never wanted to face. Spill his own blood. It was a terrifying thought, one that made his pulse race and his hands tremble. The cave seemed to shrink around him, the walls closing in tighter with each breath. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream. But deep down, he knew there was no escaping this. No escaping what his family had done. Are you saying I have to die? Leo's voice was a whisper, his throat tight with panic. Thomas shook his head slowly. Not necessarily. But your blood has to be offered, freely. It's the only way to break the creature's hold. To stop it from rising again and consuming everything. To close the door your family opened. Leo stood frozen, his thoughts colliding in a blur of fear, anger, and helplessness. Was this really the only way? To give himself up, to spill his own blood in this ancient ritual? And then, as if to answer him, the ground shook violently once more. The growl from the Leviathan grew deafening, filling the cave with a deep, rumbling resonance that made the walls crack. The roar was unlike anything Leo had ever heard, it was pure rage, primal and unrelenting. It's too late, Thomas whispered, his face stricken with fear. It's almost here. You have to decide now, Leo. Either you stop it, or it will destroy everything. The town. The people. All of us. The creature will consume everything. Leo looked toward the entrance of the cave. The distant rumblings of the Leviathan echoed through the earth, its shadow growing closer. The waves were crashing against the rocks above, but it wasn't just the waves. It was the creature. Leo could feel it, a living force, closing in, drawn to him like a magnet. He closed his eyes for a moment, hearing his mother's voice once more, the blood must be spilled. Was it truly the only way? Was this his fate? To give up his life to stop the creature? Or was there another path, one he hadn't yet seen? The ground shook again, harder this time. The cave seemed to pulse with energy, a powerful force that Leo could feel deep in his chest. He had to make a choice. Now, Leo, make your choice, Thomas said, his voice strained, panic creeping into his tone. We don't have much time. Part 6, The Final Choice. The tremor in the ground grew more violent, the air thick with the stench of salt water and the unmistakable sense of something ancient and malevolent drawing near. The low, guttural growl of the Leviathan reverberated through the walls of the cave, a sound that seemed to come from deep within the earth, as though the beast itself was calling to him. Leo's heart pounded in his chest, his mind a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and defiance. He stood at the altar, frozen, torn between the unbearable weight of his family's dark legacy and the gnawing instinct to survive. The air felt heavier now, pressing in on him from all sides, as if the very cave walls were closing in. Thomas's voice broke through his thoughts. Leo, you need to make a choice. The Leviathan's coming. You can feel it, can't you? Leo turned to him, his eyes wide with desperation. I don't want this. I don't want to be part of this curse. But if I do what you're saying, I don't even know if it'll work. And what happens to me? Your blood, Leo, Thomas said, his voice low and tense. It's the key. It's always been the key. The ritual has to be completed, but it can only be done by you. You're the last one. The only one who can finish it. The words felt like chains wrapping around his chest, suffocating him. He was trapped, not just by the creature outside, but by his very bloodline. His family's past, the curse, the pact they'd made, all of it had led him here. To this moment. To this choice. Leo stepped away from the altar, his heart hammering in his chest. The ground beneath him rumbled again, stronger this time, sending a shower of pebbles down from the ceiling. He could feel the pressure building in the cave, as though the earth itself were alive, and it was closing in on him. The Leviathan was near, and it wouldn't stop until it had him. Until it had all of them. Leo, Thomas began, but his voice faltered. If you don't do it, if you don't stop it, the creature will keep coming. It won't just destroy the town. It will wipe everything out. The entire world, maybe. Leo clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the decision bearing down on him. His eyes flicked to the cave entrance, where the distant rumble of the Leviathan's growl grew louder, shaking the very ground beneath him. He could feel it, the creature's presence growing stronger. He could feel the pull of it, calling to him in ways he couldn't explain. And then, as if responding to his internal conflict, the air around him seemed to shimmer. A cold, oppressive pressure filled the cave, and the sound of crashing waves grew deafening, shaking the walls as if the ocean itself were pushing through the earth. The creature was here. It was coming. Leo staggered backward, gasping for breath as the ground trembled beneath his feet. He could hear the distant roar of the Leviathan, a sound so primal and deep that it shook him to his core. The creature wasn't just an animal, it was something ancient, something that had been waiting for this moment, for his bloodline, for him. The blood must be spilled. His mother's voice echoed in his mind again, a whisper in the darkness. Leo's stomach churned as he thought of the ritual, of the sacrifice. His blood. His life. Was he really the key to stopping this? Was this truly the only way? A new sound broke through the chaos, the faint, distant sound of cracking stone. The cave itself seemed to respond to the creature's call, vibrating with the force of its approach. Leo's breath caught in his throat. Leo, you have to decide, Thomas urged, his voice shaky now. You're the only one left who can stop this. I don't want to die, Leo whispered, his voice shaking with fear. He closed his eyes, his heart racing. He could feel the weight of his ancestors' choices pressing down on him, their blood, their pact. He was the final link in this twisted chain. You won't die, Thomas said quietly, his voice strangely calm. It doesn't have to end that way. You just have to give your blood, just a drop, to seal it away. The creature feeds on blood, Leo. And your blood is the final key to locking it back in the dark. But Leo wasn't sure he could believe him. Would the creature really leave them alone if he sacrificed a part of himself? Or would it take everything? Would it be satisfied with his blood, or would it demand more? He took a shaky breath, his fingers twitching as he looked down at the altar, the ancient markings etched into the stone like scars on the earth itself. The ritual. The blood. His blood. The growl of the Leviathan roared through the cave again, louder this time, shaking the walls until they cracked. The sound was like an angry scream, reverberating through the cavern as if it were trying to break free of its prison. I can't, Leo whispered, backing away, his chest tight with panic. I can't do this. But even as he said the words, he felt the pull, the weight of his bloodline, of the choices made long before he was born, pressing on him like a millstone. The creature was coming, its presence growing stronger with every passing moment. There was no escaping it, not anymore. Suddenly, there was a sharp crack. The walls of the cave trembled violently, and a massive rumble shook the earth. The sound of crashing water surged around them. It was here. Leo spun toward the entrance, his eyes wide with panic. The shadows outside seemed to ripple and bend, as if the very air was warping under the weight of the creature's power. He could feel it now, the raw, primal force of the Leviathan reaching out to him, drawing closer. He could run. He could try to escape. But where would he go? The creature would follow him. There was no escaping this. The voice of his mother returned, a distant echo in his mind. You must end it, Leo. The blood must be spilled. The seal must be broken. Tears welled up in his eyes as he looked at Thomas, who was watching him with a mixture of fear and pity. If I do this, if I give my blood, will it end? Leo's voice trembled. Thomas hesitated for a moment, his gaze flicking to the dark shadows of the cave entrance. Yes, he said, his voice barely a whisper. The ritual will end it. The creature will return to the deep, and the seal will be closed. Leo took a deep, shuddering breath. His mind was racing, but the choice was clear now. There was no other way. The creature was here, and it wouldn't stop until it had him, or worse, until it destroyed everything. With trembling hands, Leo stepped toward the altar. His heart thundered in his chest as he placed one hand on the cold stone. The markings seemed to pulse under his touch, the blood in his veins thumping in time with the rhythm of the earth. This was it. Leo closed his eyes, his mind spiraling into darkness. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to be the sacrifice. But this was the only way. The blood had to be spilled. With a final, desperate breath, he pressed his palm into the stone, feeling the sharp sting as the ritual began. Part 7, The Ritual of Blood. The air in the cave was thick, suffocating, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Leo's hand pressed against the cold, ancient stone of the altar, his fingers trembling as the markings beneath his skin began to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The growl of the Leviathan echoed through the cave, deafening and primal, a sound that seemed to shake the very bones of the earth. Leo's mind was a blur. The truth of his bloodline, the sacrifice, the curse, it all felt like a dream. But the reality of the moment was undeniable. The creature was here. It was coming. And if he didn't finish the ritual, if he didn't give in to the bloodline's demands, there would be nothing left to save. His breath came in ragged gasps as he felt the pull of the ritual deep within him. It was like a force larger than him, something greater than his own will. The bloodline was alive in him, in his veins, whispering ancient truths, ancient commands. He could hear it now, the call from deep within the earth, a voice not his own, but familiar, a voice that had haunted his dreams, his thoughts, ever since he first learned of his heritage. The blood must be spilled. The walls of the cave trembled again, as if the Leviathan itself were pressing against the stone, its fury growing, its hunger driving it closer. The waves outside crashed violently against the cliffs above, the ocean itself convulsing in time with the beast's movements. Do it, Leo, Thomas's voice broke through the noise, hoarse and fearful. It's the only way. The creature will tear everything apart if you don't. Leo looked up at Thomas, his chest tightening with a combination of fear and resolve. There was no turning back. His blood, his life, everything he had known was tied to this moment. His ancestors had summoned this nightmare, and now it was his turn to end it. A cold, primal fear gnawed at him. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to be the one to end this ancient evil, but he knew, deep down, that it had to be him. He was the last, the only one left who could end the cycle of horror his family had started. Please, Leo whispered, his voice cracking. Please let this be enough. He closed his eyes, gripping the stone with both hands. He felt a sharp, burning sensation in his palm, as if the altar itself was drawing the life from him. It was as if the very stone was hungry, thirsting for what he had to give. His heart thundered in his chest as he heard his mother's voice again, as clear as the moment it first echoed in his mind, the blood must be spilled. Leo took a deep breath. He couldn't escape this. No one could. The only thing that remained was whether he would face his fate willingly, or whether the creature would drag him down into the abyss kicking and screaming. With a low cry of resignation, Leo pressed his palm firmly against the altar, and the pain surged through him. His veins felt like they were on fire, his muscles seizing as his blood began to flow, not just from his hand, but from deep within. It was as if the ritual itself was awakening something in him, something ancient, something far more dangerous than he could comprehend. The ground rumbled violently beneath him, the cave shaking with a deafening roar. The creature, the Leviathan, was upon them. Leo could feel its presence now, the primal hunger emanating from the earth itself. His blood, his very life force, was the key to stopping it. But as the ritual continued, something shifted. The stone beneath Leo's hands began to burn, and a voice, a deep, malevolent growl, filled his mind. It wasn't his mother's voice anymore, it was the Leviathan itself. "You are mine now, Leo Winters." The voice was everywhere, surrounding him, penetrating his mind, 1,000 whispers all at once. It was not the voice of a creature, it was the voice of something older, something far more terrifying than he could have imagined. The beast was no mere animal. It was an entity of unimaginable power, a being that existed long before the first settlers had set foot on these shores. Leo gasped, his hand trembling as the stone beneath him began to crack. The altar split down the middle, a deep fissure opening as the very earth seemed to groan in agony. The growl of the Leviathan intensified, the air thickening with the tension of the moment. It was coming for him. No. This isn't how it ends. Leo screamed, but his voice was drowned out by the monstrous roar of the Leviathan. The walls shook violently, sending rocks tumbling from the ceiling as the creature's power surged through the earth. And then, something shifted, a deep, horrifying realization. The ritual wasn't just about sealing the creature away. It was a transfer. Leo's blood wasn't just a key, it was a bridge. The sacrifice was never meant to stop the creature. It was meant to bind it to him. The cold realization hit Leo like a slap in the face. The Leviathan wasn't going back to the depths of the ocean. It was taking him. His blood, his soul, his life, was the final piece in the puzzle. The creature wasn't just here to destroy, it was here to claim him. His heart raced as the altar began to crack apart, the fissures widening like jaws opening to swallow him whole. The walls trembled violently, and the growls of the Leviathan reached a deafening crescendo. Leo tried to pull away, but his body wouldn't respond. His limbs felt as though they were frozen in place, as if the ritual had claimed him in ways he couldn't escape. The blood he had spilled, the blood of his ancestors, had bound him to the Leviathan. It was too late. The creature would not be sealed away. It would take him. The air in the cave grew thick with heat, a searing, suffocating pressure that seemed to burn through Leo's very soul. He gasped for breath as the world around him began to twist and distort, the lines between reality and nightmare blurring. The Leviathan's presence was everywhere now, its power overwhelming him, pulling him into the depths. No. Leo screamed, but it was no use. The cave walls cracked wide open, and the earth beneath him shifted, swallowing him whole. The last thing Leo saw before the darkness took him was the figure of Thomas, his face twisted with horror, his mouth moving as if calling to him, but his voice was drowned out by the roar of the Leviathan.